So Donald Trump and his attorneys had that hearing scheduled today before Judge Chutkan in regards to that protective order that the prosecution submitted a motion for. And y'all remember Donald Trump's whole defense to the motion for protective order was his right to free speech. Well, let me say, today in court wasn't a good day for Donald Trump. Here are just some of the things that Judge Chutkan had to say to Donald Trump and his right to free speech. The former president has a right to free speech, but that right is not absolute. Mr. Trump, like every American, has a First Amendment right to free speech, but that right is not absolute. In a criminal case such as this one, the defendant's free speech is subject to rules. Was Donald Trump in court today? I don't know, but I know he was like, oh shit. When it comes down to whether or not Trump's public statements are covered by the protective order that's issued, Judge Chutkan said, if they result in the intimidation of a witness or the obstruction of justice, I will be scrutinizing them very carefully. When it comes down to the public statements that Donald Trump makes and whether or not those statements are intimidating a witness or obstructing justice, she gave Donald Trump a warning. She said, quote, I will be scrutinizing them very carefully, end quote. That is, she is watching him like a hawk. In every statement he makes, every post he makes, whatever he has to say at his rallies, she will be watching. In my opinion, Trump's attorneys went on to try to gaslight the judge, basically saying no one disagrees that any speech that intimidates a witness would be prohibited. What we are talking about is fair use of information. He went on to give these hypothetical scenarios, saying that what if he speaks on something from memory and it just happens to match, what's in all of the documents involved with this case. And then he brings up this hypothetical in regards to debating Mike Pence, and the judge wasn't having any of it. Her response, quote, the fact that he is running a political campaign currently has to yield to the administration of justice. And if that means he can't say exactly what he wants to say in a political speech, that is just how it's going to have to be. She then goes on to wrap this up in a bow. Quote, he is a criminal defendant. He is going to have constraints, the same as any defendant. This case is going to proceed in a normal order. She goes on to say to Trump's attorneys, you are conflating what your client needs to do to defend himself and what he wants to do politically. And what your client does to defend himself has to happen in this courtroom, not on the internet. Smackdown for Donald Trump. But in the end, they go on to talk about, non-sensitive documents. And Judge Chutkan pretty much said the prosecution was trying to persuade her. They wanted everything to be included underneath the protective order, but the judge wasn't persuaded. So I guess if there's information that's considered non-sensitive, he can freely talk about that information. But it's going to be interesting to watch Donald Trump to try to control himself and not have a slip of the tongue, because he's been so free all of this time. Those times have ended.